land. So much land that Thomas Jefferson estimated it would take 500 years to settle it all. Land in the West was the promise of America. An empire for liberty, Jefferson had called it, upon which self-sufficient farmers would extend a virtuous republic from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It was a grand dream, championed by Horace Greeley from the pages of his New York Tribune. Go west, young man, and grow up with the land. And by politicians like Missouri Senator Thomas Hart Benton, who promised free land for the homesteader as he lectured on a holy Anglo-Saxon mission to civilize the continent. Drawn by their dreams of a better life, folks packed their belongings into overstuffed, covered wagons and headed west in caravans containing as many as 200 wagons, 1,000 men, women, and children, and 3,000 to 4,000 head of cattle. The Oregon and California trails, at times little more than ruts in the dirt, ribboned over the land for 2,400 miles. The trip west was long and hard. Pioneers battled desert heat, mountain blizzards, rattlesnakes, swarms of insects, cholera and measles, thirst and starvation.
If you were a kid going west, you could probably find it both very exciting and very frightening. The chances are good that one or both of your parents would be dead by the time you got to California, and you would have to be absorbed into somebody else's family.
On hard and level ground, wagons could cover 20 miles a day, but rocky terrain and river crossings could slow the pace to less than a mile a day, as oxen strained, grunted, snorted, and brayed through swirls of choking dust, and drivers watched fearfully for Indians. False rumors of Indian attacks swept through the wagon trains. Sensational stories about savage Indians on the trails were popularized through literature and newspapers.
The Indians typically regarded the immigrants as trespassers, and they would try to collect a toll, or they wanted something from the immigrants in exchange for the grass and the use that the immigrants put on their land. The immigrants, of course, looked at this as begging and were often upset that they had to stop and make coffee or give the Indians flour or wheat. So oftentimes you'd have a lot of friction develop between the immigrants and the Indians. But typically, the relations were pretty good. And the idea that the Indians would attack wagon trains wholesale is pretty much a myth.
Of the 35,000 who died going west, shooting accidents killed far more people than Indians did.
One of the worst causes of death on the Overland Trail were gun accidents. We all think that these were brave frontiersmen crossing the plains, but very often the first gun they'd ever bought, they bought in Independence. And because they had very little experience with firearms, they'd often die pulling them out of the wagons, and it's probably about the third leading cause of death after disease, cholera, and other kinds of accidents.
The trip to Oregon took 4 to 6 months. Some groups left too late and got caught in the mountains in winter, and some got lost.